Sometimes, the people who seem to know the least are the ones who see everything. It was just another Monday morning at Jimenez and Associates Construction. The sound of printers, the shuffle of papers, the hurried steps echoing down the hall, all part of the same routine that made everyone feel important, busy, irreplaceable. But that morning, something was different. A quiet woman in a cream blazer walked through the glass doors. She looked calm, polite, almost invisible, the kind of person no one would pay much attention to. Her name was Alejandra, and everyone was told she was the new assistant. No one knew she was the CEO. She smiled, watching how the team interacted. The forced laughter, the fake compliments, the subtle arrogance of those who thought power gave them worth. At the far corner of the office, she noticed a young man, sleeves rolled up, eyes tired but focused, quietly sketching plans on his desk. That was Jose Daniel, one of the junior engineers. He had a proposal that could save the company 10% of its total budget. But his ideas were ignored, dismissed by those who feared change more than failure. Alejandra watched in silence as his supervisor, Engineer Damaris, rejected his plan with a cold smile. And beside her, Fernando, the project manager, nodded with the confidence of a man who'd never been questioned. "You've only been here 6 months," Damaris said sharply. "Don't think you can teach us how to run a company." The young engineer tried to explain himself, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "I just thought it could help the company. I ran the numbers myself. It works." But no one listened. Not to him. Not that day. When the meeting ended, he walked out quietly. No scene, no complaint, just quiet disappointment in his eyes. Alejandra watched him go, and for a brief second her calm mask cracked. She saw something in him. Honesty, maybe courage, maybe both. And she thought to herself, this company has forgotten what real value looks like. That was the moment she decided. If no one else was willing to test their honesty, she would. And she would do it in a way none of them would ever forget. When a good man gets punished for doing the right thing, the room always falls silent. That afternoon, Jose Daniel stood outside the manager's office, holding a thin folder, the same one that carried his hopes, his ideas, and now, his termination letter. "You can submit the report," Damaris said coldly, "and then you can leave." Her words cut through him like glass, but he didn't argue. He simply nodded, gathered his papers, and walked out of the building with the quiet dignity only honest men carry. Behind the glass walls, everyone went back to their screens, pretending not to see him go. Because sometimes indifference is easier than courage. But one person did notice: Alejandra. She watched him through the reflection of her monitor, the way he pressed the elevator button, the way he forced a polite smile at the receptionist who couldn't even meet his eyes. Something about that moment broke her heart. Later that day, she found him sitting alone on a park bench across the street, his tie undone, his resume folder open beside him. He wasn't angry. He just looked tired. Alejandra hesitated for a second, then walked toward him. "You don't deserve what happened," she said softly. He looked up, surprised. "You don't even know me." "Maybe not," she said, "but I know what it looks like when someone gets punished for being right." He smiled faintly, a mix of sadness and gratitude in his eyes. "It's okay. I'll start over. I always do." She sat beside him, feeling something stir, not pity, but respect. "You believe in people too much," she said gently. "That's your weakness." He turned to her. "No," he replied. "That's my strength. Even if they let me down, I can still sleep at night." The sun dipped behind the buildings, casting long shadows across the park. And for a moment, in that fading light, Alejandra saw more integrity in that one man's silence than in all the company's board meetings combined. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about him, not because he was clever, not because he was kind, but because he was the first person in years who made her question the system she built. Maybe, she thought, to fix this company, I have to start with its heart. And that heart might just be him. Sometimes, the real interviews don't happen in offices. They happen at dinner tables. It had been 3 days since Jose Daniel's dismissal, 3 days since the office forgot his name, but one woman hadn't forgotten. That evening, Alejandra scrolled through her contacts, then paused. Her thumb hovered over his name. She typed slowly, "Dinner tonight, 7 p.m., my treat." A few minutes later, his reply came, short, polite, curious. "Why me?" She smiled to herself. "You'll find out soon." The restaurant glowed under amber lights. Not too fancy, not too casual. The kind of place where you could tell the truth and still hide behind the clinking of silverware. When Jose arrived, he didn't expect to see half the office there. Damaris, dressed like she was attending a gala. Fernando, leaning back with his usual arrogance. A glass of red wine already half empty. And in the middle of it all, Alejandra, still the quiet assistant, pretending not to hold all the power in the room. "Good evening, everyone," she said calmly. "Let's enjoy ourselves tonight. The company's future starts with how we treat each other." Her words hung in the air, polite, harmless, but her eyes said something else. The dinner began lightheartedly. Laughter echoed between plates of pasta and wine glasses. Fernando made jokes about promotions. Damaris praised Alejandra's effort to fit in. Jose said little. He sat at the end of the table, quietly watching, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. He noticed small things, how Fernando's hand brushed Damaris's too often, how they whispered whenever Alejandra wasn't looking, and how Alejandra, with her steady gaze, seemed to notice everything, but said nothing. Then, halfway through dinner, Alejandra's phone rang. She excused herself politely and stepped away, and that's when it happened. A leather wallet, Alejandra's, slipped from her purse and landed beside the bread basket. Thick, full, unmistakably expensive. Fernando saw it first. He froze, glanced at Damaris, and gave a quiet smirk. "She won't even notice," he whispered. "Fernando, don't," Damaris muttered, half laughing, half afraid. He ignored her. His hand reached for the wallet. Smooth, confident, practiced. Jose's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward, voice calm but sharp. "You might want to leave that where it is." The table went still. "Relax," Fernando said, chuckling. "I was just kidding." "No," Jose replied. "You weren't." Damaris tried to change the subject. "Let's not ruin the night. We're all friends here, aren't we?" But the air had shifted. The laughter had disappeared. Only silence remained, and the quiet hum of truth waiting to be heard. Moments later, Alejandra returned. "Everything all right?" she asked, looking at each of them. No one answered. The wallet was still on the table, untouched, or so she thought. Alejandra smiled faintly. Something told her the night had just begun. People don't reveal who they are when you question them, she thought. They reveal it when they think you're not watching. And so, she poured another glass of wine and quietly let the test continue. Every person has a price, but the honest ones refuse to be sold. The dinner had turned quiet. The laughter from earlier had vanished, and all that remained was the faint sound of cutlery and a single wallet lying innocently between the wine glasses. Fernando's eyes darted toward it again. He glanced at Damaris, smirking like a child who'd found a secret toy. "She won't even notice," he whispered. "Fernando, please," Damaris muttered. "You're going too far." He leaned closer. "Relax, I'm just checking if it's real leather." But it wasn't curiosity, it was greed, the kind that grows quietly, one justification at a time. Fernando opened the wallet halfway, his fingers brushing against a neat stack of cash, crisp new bills, more than he'd make in a week. He froze, just for a moment, then slipped one note into his pocket, quick, smooth. Like someone who'd done it before. No one said a word, except one person. Jose. He placed his glass down slowly, the soft clink cutting through the room like a bell. "If you need the money that badly," he said, "maybe ask for a raise instead of stealing it." Fernando looked up, his fake smile faltering. "What did you just say?" "You heard me." Damaris gasped quietly. "Jose, please, don't make a scene." But the scene had already begun. Jose turned to her calmly. "Silence helps the thief more than the truth helps the honest." The table froze. No one dared breathe. And then, as if nothing had happened, Alejandra returned. "Did I miss anything?" she asked, her tone casual, almost playful. "Nothing at all," Fernando said quickly, his smile returning. "We were just talking about responsibility." "Ah," she nodded, sitting down. "An interesting topic." Her eyes drifted to the table. The wallet was still there, but lighter by exactly one missing bill. She didn't react. Not yet. She poured herself another glass of wine and raised it gently. "To honesty," she said softly. Fernando hesitated, then lifted his own glass with a forced grin. "To honesty," he echoed. Jose stared at the glass but didn't raise his. "Forgive me," he said quietly. "I can't toast to something that isn't here." Alejandra's eyes flickered toward him, just for a moment. And that was all she needed to know. He saw everything, she thought, and he said something. For the first time that night, Alejandra smiled, not politely, not strategically, but with genuine admiration. In a world where silence feeds corruption, she thought, the brave speak softly and mean it. The dinner ended soon after, but the night's silence followed them home, the kind of silence that only truth can leave behind. The next morning, the office was quieter than usual. No laughter, no chatter, just the sound of whispers and nervous footsteps echoing through the hallway. An unexpected meeting had been called. Everyone was required to attend. Inside the conference room, the air was heavy, like the calm before a storm. Damaris sat stiffly, adjusting her blazer every few seconds. Fernando leaned back in his chair, pretending confidence, but his fingers tapped anxiously against the table. Jose sat near the back, calm, collected, unsure why he'd even been invited after being fired. Then the door opened. Alejandra walked in. But this time, she wasn't the new assistant. No polite smile, no soft tone. Her presence filled the room with quiet authority. She placed a folder on the table. Inside, a set of documents, invoices, bank transfers, hidden accounts. And then she spoke. "Good morning," she said, her voice firm. "My name is Engineer Alejandra Jimenez, General Manager of Jimenez and Associates Construction." The room froze. Damaris's lips parted. Fernando's smirk vanished. Jose blinked, disbelief, then understanding. "Wait," Damaris stammered. You're the general manager?" "That's right," Alejandra replied, looking straight at her. "And I'm here because I wanted to see this company, my company, for what it truly is." She opened another folder. "Here," she said, "are the invoices Fernando inflated. Here are the bribes paid under your approval, Damaris. And here," she paused, looking directly at Fernando, "is proof of the money taken last night. One missing bill." Fernando jumped to his feet. "You can't prove that." Alejandra's expression didn't change. She pressed a button on the remote. The TV screen behind her flickered to life. A security camera clip appeared, the restaurant, the table, the wallet, and Fernando's hand. The silence that followed was absolute. He swallowed hard, his bravado gone. "It's not what it looks like," he mumbled. "It's exactly what it looks like," Alejandra replied. "You stole from me, not just money, but trust." She turned to Damaris. "And you enabled it. You ignored ideas that could have saved the company just to protect your ego." Damaris's voice trembled. "I didn't know." You didn't want to know, Alejandra interrupted, because knowing would have forced you to do the right thing. No one dared to move. Fernando, she said firmly, you're fired, effective immediately. And if the missing funds aren't returned by 5 p.m., you'll face legal consequences. He stood there stunned, his arrogance melting into fear. He tried to speak, but no words came. And in that silence, everyone finally saw who he really was. Then Alejandra turned to Damaris. You failed as a leader, she said quietly. You stopped listening to your people. You valued titles more than talent. But I'm willing to give you one last choice, humility or pride. Damaris looked away, eyes filling with tears. I won't stay here to be humiliated, she muttered. Then you'll leave the same way you treated others, Alejandra replied, empty-handed. Damaris stood up, gathered her things, and walked out, heels echoing like the sound of regret. The door closed. For a moment, there was nothing but stillness. Then Alejandra looked at Jose. You, she said, her tone softening, were the only one who spoke the truth when it mattered. He didn't know what to say. I just did what anyone should have done, he murmured. No, she said with a faint smile. You did what most people don't. She extended her hand. Welcome back to the company, Engineer Jose Daniel, this time as project manager. He blinked, speechless. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, she replied. Just keep being the man who proved that integrity still has value. The room exhaled. For the first time in years, the company didn't just feel cleaner. It felt alive again. The storm had finally passed, but what it left behind was clarity. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the office windows, soft, golden, alive. The same space that once felt cold and tense now seemed lighter, freer, almost hopeful. Alejandra stood by the window, arms crossed, watching as the team slowly returned to work. Their conversations were quieter, their movements humbler. It was as if truth itself had rearranged the air. And then, Jose Daniel walked in, no longer wearing the weary face of a dismissed employee, but the quiet confidence of a man who had earned his place the hard way. He paused at the door, unsure if he should knock. Alejandra turned, smiling softly. You don't need permission anymore, she said. This is your office now. He looked around, the desk, the plans, the sunlight pouring across the floor. Everything that had once belonged to Fernando. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like justice. He approached her, still unsure what to say. You didn't have to do all that. For me. Alejandra shook her head gently. I didn't do it for you. I did it for the kind of person this company needs. Someone who believes honesty still matters. He smiled, humbled. You really went undercover, just to find that? Sometimes, she said, you have to lose sight of the top floor to understand what's happening on the ground. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that carries relief and gratitude. She walked closer, lowering her voice. You know, last night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that dinner, how everyone tried to look impressive and how you were the only one who stayed silent. Because you didn't need to prove anything. He met her gaze. I didn't stay silent, he said quietly. I just chose to speak only when it mattered. Alejandra nodded. Exactly. That's what leadership is. A brief pause, and then she held out a small key. Create your own team, she said. Rebuild this company the right way. The next generation will learn from you. Jose took the key carefully, as if it were made of something far more valuable than metal. I won't let you down, he said. You already didn't, Alejandra replied. That's why you're here. Outside, the workers' laughter drifted up from the construction site below, real, unforced, honest. And for the first time in years, Alejandra felt proud again, not of her title, but of her people. Sometimes, she thought, it doesn't take a lifetime to rebuild a company. just one honest heart, and the courage to listen to it. Sometimes life doesn't test us with big battles. It tests us with small temptations, the kind that no one else sees. A missing dollar, a stolen idea, a lie told to save face. They seem small at the time, but they shape who we become. In this story, it wasn't Alejandra's title that made her powerful. It wasn't the company she owned or the money she controlled. It was her courage. The courage to see through masks and to reward honesty over ambition. And Jose? He didn't win because he was perfect. He won because, in a room full of pretenders, he refused to pretend. He stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. He spoke when truth was inconvenient. And that's what changed everything. Because real integrity doesn't make you rich overnight, but it lets you sleep at night. And one day, it gives you something far more valuable than success: respect. Alejandra learned that leadership isn't about power. It's about listening. Jose proved that even when life fires you unjustly, your dignity is the one thing no one can take away. And maybe that's the quiet message behind it all. When you stay honest, the right people eventually find you, even if it takes time, even if it costs everything. 3 reminders from today's story. 1. Always choose integrity over opportunity. Every choice writes your reputation. 2. Don't confuse silence with peace. Sometimes silence protects the wrong side. 3. And never underestimate small acts of courage. They're what build real leaders. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need hope today. And tell us in the comments, what would you have done at that dinner table?